Okay, the first thing we want to look at is measuring the voltage. And this is a two-channel oscilloscope. So there's actually an input on this side and an input on that side, and the controls are mirrored down the center. The controls on the left are for channel 1, and the controls on the right are for channel 2. And so I've got my function generator inputted into channel 1, so I'm going to just look at the controls for channel 1. There's a switch here that shows AC, GND, which stands for ground, and DC. Now, that's a little bit confusing because people think of alternating current and direct current, but that's not exactly what that means. It's related to them, but not quite the same thing. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. But first, I want to show you what happens when I flip the switch to the ground. I get a flat line. Now, if you remember from class, we talked about what a ground is. A ground is where the voltage is set to be 0. And so there's a position control here that lets me vary the height of my waveform. And by setting it to the ground, I can very quickly zero my instrument because I know when it's properly grounded, it should read 0 volts. So I just line it up with the x-axis, which is where the y-axis would be 0, and that has zeroed. Then I can switch back to my signal, and I have it properly centered. Now this position control lets me move it up and down like this. The reason that I might want to be able to do that is if I want to measure, say, from the height to the height, say from the bottom to the top, if I line it up with one of these horizontal lines, it's easier to count up and measure how many divisions there are on this grid. And so this is setting right here. This knob lets me set how many volts each of these larger grids represents. And so I've set it to 1 volt per division there. That means each of these 1 block grids is 1 volt. And so from the center up would be 1, 2, 3 volts and just a hair. But do I have it grounded? I don't have it grounded. So that would be a bad reading. But now I've got it zeroed properly. And I can go from the 0 up, 1, 2, 3, and then there's a little tick mark. There's 5 little tick marks, so each one of those represents 0.2. And so that would, from the center up, would be 1, 2, 3, 0.3. It looks like to my eye. You probably can't see that, but it's a little bit above that 2 tick mark. And that would be measuring from the center up. But if I wanted to measure from peak to peak, I might lift this up a little bit so that the bottom peak lines up with this horizontal line, and then I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. So that would be 6.6 volts peak to peak. Cut.